So now we are clear that in order to design a series of lessons, a unit of work, it is not enough to just look at the content of the curriculum. It is not good enough to just uncritically appropriate whatever techniques people say work, right? Work is just such a handy word to use. What's important is to have particular concepts that matter to your subject, like, for example, literacy teaching, and have the questions that actually identify the questions that will, in relation to which you will identify the learning experiences that you need to provide in order for that content of the curriculum to come alive through particular teaching strategies that you will adopt, right? So learning experiences. So how are we gonna do that? So this is the content, this is the learning experiences that we need to generate. So it's not too difficult, right? Because some of you have already been through my resources that I have supplied in Module 4 on LearnLine. And you have seen this framework that I adjusted from a publication with Amy Norman. So it's very simple, right? We have 3 stages here: inspire, engage, and evaluate. I've spoken about it. So inspire, we need students to actually see the reason why they are working on a particular thing. Engagement, it is following a plan that they will devise at the end of the inspiration step. So they follow the plan. And then evaluation, you evaluate with them how well they have actually addressed the objectives that they have identified in the inspiration phase, which is stage 1, right? So stage 1 is extremely important, but typically stage 1 is not really well reflected on, and people think, well, I'll take them to zoo and then they will do this, right? Well, I have no problem with it, but I like doing things systematically, because once you have a matrix, you can just follow a matrix. You don't have to scratch your head every time you have to teach another unit of work. So if we look at it, if we look at our design, this is the Australian curriculum design, and I have here I have mapped on the Australian curriculum also the early years learning framework, because they are no different. They use similar way of structuring, except that they use different terms that are more appropriate for the specific levels of children. But the objectives are pretty much the same when it comes to the capabilities, and you still, when you actually go about implementing the objectives, like children have a strong sense of identity and children are connected, you still need to pay attention to things like the kind of literature that you will be using, the linguistic forms that you will be drawing students' attention to, and also the kinds of literacy skills that you actually want to teach, because otherwise you're not teaching literacy, you're doing something else, right? So that's pretty much what I wanted to say on the similarities of these 2 frameworks. That's why I mapped them all on each other, because they are very much the same. So in inspiration stage, I wrote here that because we have a concept of literacy, and the concept of literacy means that you use literacy tools in order to enhance your participation in the society, the teacher should not, the aim now is not for teachers to teach a particular literacy skill that they have decided would be relevant for their students. The aim is to now engage with the community in order to identify the needs of the community that might inspire an engagement of your students in such a way that they will contribute to the community, they will reflect on the community needs, they will reflect on and learn as a result the kinds of literacy skills that will help them to address the community need, right? So we spoke about it in terms of learning experiences. So what do you do here in this stage? Once you have spoken to the principal and to the indigenous officer in your school and maybe culture officer if you're lucky to have one, and you have connected with the community and you found people who will tell you, well, this is a fantastic idea. We would love your students to maybe create a website through which maybe your students could display their own projects, the things they do, and they could actually, and the same website could also be shared by maybe children from Cambodia or children from schools in Indonesia, so that children in Indonesia have a motivation to learn English and your students feel maybe, well, two things. They might actually take on the role of teachers of the language they know. Maybe they will also later on get interested in learning some Indonesian, especially since maybe some of the text you might be translating into Indonesian using Google Translator. So that's one role as a teacher. And another role, a learner about the culture of the other people, about the things they do. Right? So it's a kind of mutual, I try to call it exchange, but something like that. Other activities, I think that in some of those documents of this kind, I might have written them. So yes, we did it at university. I've never tried this in schools, or maybe we have, I can't remember anymore. But basically creating one day on Australian television. We did it actually in a French class, created one day on French television. That was fun. One day, or maybe not just one day, maybe creating a little, recreating a favorite show. Obviously, children will not recreate it word by word. They will actually add their own flavor, but something like that. So there's plenty of them. Maybe creating a particular show or and come to the aged care center and actually display what they have learned in school. So that's another thing. Maybe aged care center wants to, as I spoke about it before, have an event of sorts and they need invitations, and children could quite nicely create beautiful invitations. Maybe an aged care center had an event and has and maybe it was shared already with your school, and wouldn't it be nice to create little stories about it, to have a little book about what happened with pictures, photos, drawings and text? You know, imagination, you can just let your imagination fly here. But once you have done all this consultation, what do you do with it? Well, I strongly suggest that once you have done the consultation, you actually map the needs of the activity. The needs of the activity in terms of the or relevant curriculum content, right? So, oh my goodness, in order for children to actually create invitations for an event, in an aged care center the following elements of say early years learning framework or the Australian curriculum will be engaged, right? So you map the needs of the activity. I know that we often talk about the needs of the students, but I think this is a kind of old term and very ambiguous. But before we map anyone's needs, anyone's personal needs or whatever needs, we need to actually know what the activity what demand the activity places on you as a teacher. What is it that you need to prepare? What is it? What kind of objectives will need to be met? Right? What kind of resources you need to bring with you, and what kind of people you need to engage in order to make it all happen. So that's the thing. We need to actually map the needs of the activity. So this is a brief way to actually go about this task. So this is literacy needs, or we could call it activity needs. So in terms of literacy, what kind of literacy skills, what kind of texts that you will need to use in order for students to actually, so let's talk about invitation as an example. What kind of text you need to actually bring with you into the classroom so that students develop the relevant understanding of what an invitation is and how it should look like. What linguistic forms should these texts have in order for children and students to build increasingly informed understanding of the differences between different invitations, maybe even cultural differences, linguistic differences, historical differences, right? So you do a bit of a mapping. So it is very easy. I prepared this table for you just to, it actually is longer, but my screen doesn't capture the whole thing, but I will send it all to you in the PowerPoint. So it's very easy in traditional classroom to say, well, that's really simple. I just show them an invitation, they'll just reproduce it, and it is done. The whole experience is gonna take us 45 minutes. Yep. Except that when they want to create another invitation, they'll be continuously plagiarizing the same one. And what happens then, we're not really teaching children creativity, critical thinking, and intercultural differences. What we're teaching them is plagiarizing, right? And that's not necessarily in the curriculum of any kind. So when you map your the materials and resources, human resources, but now we'll actually talk about the literature first. So when you map the text in relation to which you would like your students to develop the concept of invitation, you do not ask yourself what is the invitation, right? And you say, oh my God, I'm gonna deliver those invitations. You ask yourself, what experiences do I need to actually generate in my students for them to build an understanding of themselves and on others in the community, right? Because invitation is not it's not just an invitation. Invitation enables students now to not just create something for other people, but also see themselves as agents in the community, and the act of producing an invitation changes them, their perceptions of themselves and their perceptions of others. And now, in order for children to do it, or for students to do it in a way that is truly transforming, those experiences that we want to actually generate in students should be generated in relation to texts that are diverse in terms of their historical dimension, right? Invitation today, invitation in the 15th century, how did they look like? What about the clay tablet? It would have been like 2 kilograms heavy. right? Portability, that we will talk about later. But anyway, so historical dimension, so right, so when you actually are mapping what the activity requires now, what are the needs of the activity, you ask yourself what experiences you need to generate in the students for them to actually see the invitation as a context through which they now learn about being part of the community. And our community is old. I mean, however we count it, it is at least 21st century old, right? So, and it's older because obviously we come from, we're old. So how do you take this newly born human being and now shape it in such a way that they become increasingly socialized, but not socialized in order to get narrowed down, but socialized to actually expand the understanding of themselves and of others. So the historical dimension you consider of text, you consider geographical dimension. Well, I don't really know what invitations look like in different areas of the globe, but that's an interesting thing to explore, and go to Google and Google Images and type those words and see what you can save on your PowerPoint. Now you can see when you come to a class, you go to the class as hysterical as I. When I come to your class to teach you, I always look for what? USB. Where's my USB? Where are my resources? Where are my websites? Right? I've got my YouTube channel. I've got all these resources in place just in case I need them. And you too, you can't just pop in and pop out like a holiday. You need to be prepared. You need to have not just well-planned units of work, but you also need to have resources. So historical dimension, geographical dimensions, and also technology dimension. Right? Technology is important because those invitations used to be written on clay tablets, I presume. I have no idea, but let our imagination fly. Papyrus, paper, what else people write invitations on? I have no idea. You could explore. And you can see that now the literature, the kinds of texts that you think of that you might need to bring with you, or you not necessarily always make them available to students because the class has its own flow. But just like I come sometimes with a PowerPoint to the on-campus class and we never even get to open it, right? But you need to bring the resources so that when the moment is right, when the time comes in, we can play, look at them, and have fun, and have a laugh, and ask questions, and maybe, you will not have enough of them, and then type on Google and search with children for things. It has to be fun. Okay, so once you actually have thought of that kinds of, and I don't know which sequence, I think I would, you can think of a sequence, literature, language, literacy, or literature, literacy, language. I'm not God. You can see how they basically are complementary. So once you've done one, second, and third, then you can actually cross-check whether they are consistent together. So what kind of linguistic forms should these texts have? And the curriculum and both of them make you actually sensitive to the fact that we live across time, across spaces, and using different tools. So again, you might actually reflect on, check your literature, check the text you have actually already chosen as appropriate, check them for linguistic forms in terms of their historical dimension. We've spoken about it for Assignment 1, right? So that's why we've done all this work in Assignment 1. Have you got some older text, some younger text from different places, and text that have different tools? And let's have a look how the linguistic forms used to look like. So just to make it really a contrast, and which is appropriate for early childhood as much as it is appropriate for older children or students. When you have a clay tablet, obviously the linguistics forms were different. So there were drawings, there were crosses and circles before the alphabet of sorts was invented. It wasn't like ours, but it was an alphabet of sorts. So the linguistic forms, again, you check your literature choices against the linguistic forms they have across those 3 dimensions, and you also look at the literacy skills. I just mentioned a few here. I pulled them out. That interpretation, analysis, evaluation, interaction with others, creating text, right? All these skills. And you might actually now think, what are the demands of the activity that you are planning to engage students in? So the historical dimension of those skills, whether you will be actually, depends on children's age and the requirements of the activity. Whether you will be comparing the skills across history, across those specific skills of interpretation, analysis, evaluation across history, across places, and also across different tools. Tools are here very interesting, right? Because imagine analyzing data without technology, right? And with technology, I mean, a huge difference. Imagine actually those clay tablets where people were storing information, Natalie owes me this much rye and someone else owes me this much rice, and then you can only actually keep track of it for a very limited amount of time, or they were not very efficient, right? Because not only that they break, but how much information you can put on a clay tablet. Interpret, analyze, evaluate, interact, so on. So you will think in relation to those 3 dimensions. I think they're very useful dimension. Now, once you have, so you first do your literature, then you compare your literature choices against the language forms, whether they are actually linguistically diverse and whether they are also enabling your students to develop skills also 3-dimensionally across time, space, and technology. Now, once you've done that, then you do the same as for assignment 1, which is now you again look at your resources and you think to yourself, okay, what kind of community do they reflect? Right? So this is this ethical and intercultural dimension. And once you've done that, you look at also again at the choice of your literature, and you think to yourself, all right, so we look now into creative and critical aspect. What kind of range do I actually expose students to? Invitations probably didn't look like invitations in the past, didn't look like invitations today. So sometimes, and I've mentioned that many times for the purpose of our assignment 1, that you can't actually understand how to create an invitation until you actually know what's the difference between that and email, or that and a novel, right? So different concepts, but they're not only concepts of different genres, but they could be also types of invitation, right? So there are personal invitations, there are organizational invitations. Look, you're pressing me because I really have no idea. You'd have to go to Google and type, say, types of invitations. But I can just imagine personal, organizational invitations. Then there are community invitations, right? What is changing? Your obligation to participate, right? So your obligation to participate in a personal invitation is very high. In organizational invitation, well, not so much, but yes. In the community, well, maybe not at all. But then maybe, there are, but you might feel guilty because this is gonna do some good things for the community, and the community is small and everyone will know you're not there. So what other invitations you can think of? right? But you can see that critical and creative requires now to increase the range of types of things that we have included in terms of the materials we will be referring to when actually supporting students' learning. So you can see that the whole table looks really complicated, but it isn't. It is only a three-dimensional or multi-dimensional way for you to reflect on what you're bringing as a resource into your classroom. Okay, so let me now have a look here. I don't think I can. I think something got stuck in my. All right. So now, what is your role, right? So, sorry, I just went. I have a problem with the PowerPoint. I usually do when I record and I run the PowerPoint at the same time. So, so what do we have here? We've done the literacy needs. Now we need to think of literacy experiences. So literacy experiences is easy, right? Because now, once we have all these sources, those materials identified, those resources here, we can run through the list of the experiences we need to actually generate, and just let's stay with the literacy for the time being. Experiences we need to generate in our students to actually for them want to engage in an activity and actually define it for themselves and identify objectives. I have actually mentioned all of this in Lion and Norman chapter. So in the context of a agreement with an age care center, that our students will produce invitations, right? Now, that's what the adults agreed on. Now, how do you sell it to students? But this is the question you will need to address, and we will think of it a little bit later. But that's the question we will need to resolve. So, and it has to be resolved in such a way that it will result with students feeling enthusiastic about doing something for a community, or maybe doing different invitations for the same people, right? So the seniors will end up with different types of invitations if your students divide into groups and every group wants to do an invitation a bit differently, and that's fine. And then we will have to create learning support. Now I moved to this slide accidentally, running ahead of myself, but what I really wanted to point out, while these aspects, literacy needs, or your literacy needs, literacy experiences, and learning support are elements of your design, you can clearly see that your role in the framework that I am sharing with you is not to teach, as it is to actually facilitate these experiences so that learning happens, right? So that learning happens. And you will measure the outcomes of this learning in relation to the map you will produce at this stage of the design, right? So this is the design. These are the content. These are the curriculum content things that I will generate, and particular materials I will develop because these materials respond to the requirements of the curriculum. So here's the map of my design, and then once the students have gone through the 10 weeks, not for this particular assignment, but in real life, have gone through 5 or 10 weeks of their project-based learning, and they've done all of that, you evaluate students' learning in relation to the map that you have just generated, and we are learning to do it right now. So this is what being a facilitator means. It means to actually have a map of the needs of the entire project, of the needs in terms of materials, resources, and the scope of the activity required, and also in terms of understanding your role in it, right? So your role is not to teach, your role is to facilitate. And this little map is no different, those three elements, than what we have in those three columns for inspire or for engage, right? And evaluate is a little bit different because we evaluate in relation to inspire. So how would you how would you actually inspire your children, your students, to a particular activity? Now, typically people say, as I said before, take them somewhere and show them the HK Center. Yes, one of the problems that an excursion has is that teachers tend not to prepare students for an excursion. So kids just run, and we tell them to write some notes or take some pictures. Well, that's not very thoughtful. What would be nice is to actually prepare them, and if they go to a zoo, or if they go to a senior's house, or if they go somewhere, they should maybe have some questions pre-prepared, maybe have done some reading, some discussions about the place, and so on. So in the past, I see these as sort of things. So if it was on a smartboard, children could click, and underneath all these little pictures could be activities, all of them in one way or another related to the theme. And as students go through those activities, they get increasingly engaged in the problematic of, for example, older people, or I don't know, in the problematic of, this is very funny, you will never find out, some of you might know, but the theme that I created, these ones it was ELA 200 students, but this one is mine. I created it with Amy, and the theme for it was friends. So this is the circle, Aboriginal circle for meetings. Well, friends, obviously, this is the emu steps, but also Aboriginal symbols for emu. Emu was here. And this is, I think, friends, people, two people or something walking in, I think, in one of the alphabets of Japanese. But I think I've seen those characters also in China, so probably they're across the languages. Anyway, so that's for friends. So as students click underneath, they meet, they learn more about it. They might actually do some reading, like exploratory activities. So you actually can have a full blown out 5 lessons in the engaging literacy skills simply by introducing students to a subject itself, right? So the introduction doesn't have to be a real quick thing, so that we can get overdone with unit of work. It can be actually quite long, engaging children in literacy activities. So another thing that I used to show to students, and I couldn't find right now the particular PowerPoint with it, but you can go actually to Google Maps, and you can type. Norman works in Parap School, so we just type Parap School, wherever, Darwin, and then you can go to, and you need to start teaching children maps, but you can actually go to Where's the little human being? Right, somewhere here. So you have a street view. Oh my God, look what it is. We are on Google Maps. Do we know where we are? And you can actually do quite nice. Oh my goodness, that must be after cyclone, where this looks like this. Anyway, so you might actually explore the surroundings with Google Maps. How did I used to do it? There must be some other also view than street view, satellite view, right? So how do I get the satellite view? How do I get a satellite view? Let's go to maps. I can't even get to this one anymore. How do I? Oh my goodness, I forgot how to use Google Maps. Okay, so there was a cross in the right top right corner, so I crossed it and I got out. I am in this view, and now I want to go to satellite view. Don't ask me why, I've worked on it before. Anyway, this is lovely. And this is the perhaps pool and perhaps school somewhere here. Great. And we can actually, explore our community. Like, oh my God, have you actually seen? Anyone knows what's what, right? And we can actually, so this is also a literacy activity. We could read the streets. We don't know how to read the street. We can type the text into the text to speech, right? So if we're dealing with little children, we can actually start developing in them the idea that these things have sounds. So not necessarily by going like ROS, right, or ROS, we can actually just type it in, so that it's gonna take them 2 hours to find R on the keyboard, but we've got plenty of time. And if they work together, like 5 children per iPad or computer, it's gonna be sped up a little bit. So if kids could, or if you had a keyboard displayed on the smartboard, children could actually type on the smartboard ROSS, and classroom would be really loud. So that's exactly what the principal likes. And finally, we would have gotten this ROSS. Then we would click on the text-to-speech person who's actually reading the text, and all of a sudden the ROSS would have been read as Ross and Smith and Avenue, right? So there you go. So there are ways of actually integrating literacy even in the introductory stages of unit of work. So we learn where we are, and then we find out that this is the HK Center, and we've never seen it before. Oh my goodness, it's close to what? I don't know what it is. Some racing court, racing club. So that's great. So what else? We can actually learn a lot about the seniors club, actually, right, oh not club, but seniors home, right from the maps. We can learn about the address, the surroundings, so this is how you actually draw the students into the activity. You might even find some pictures, you might even have them ready, and then you can discuss with students about the old age and what happens. Some of them have, well, if they're little, they don't have very old grandparents, because at my age I could already had 5,000 grandchildren, and they wouldn't be too old. But no, I'm not too old, no, right? So but they might have seen some older people, and we can explain to them why they live in aged care centers and so on. So, but this is just an example for you how to actually use literacy skills while also drawing children to get their investment in the activity. So that's one idea, other than those things. So underneath here, so if children clicked, I had some things that used to work. So for example, where did I have the things that worked? So this is how I used to show It should actually, let's have a look where it has a link. It doesn't seem to have a link, right? What about this one? They used to have links underneath them. They don't have a link for some reason. Maybe because I no longer needed it in here. But something like that. So underneath each of those things, there would be an activity that would, so one could be Google Maps, one could be talking, or one could be an activity involving something to, I don't know, your imagination. Anything to actually engage children by children's investment in the activity that you're planning for them. I've spoken about things like this with Amy Norman in that paper that we have published. So when we were, so it's on your, it's in module 4, I hope it works. So it's in module 4, you will find it. So we have actually quite nicely discussed what you could actually have underneath those icons and how you can actually draw in students into an activity. Once you identify what you want to do in that activity, have a look at the plan, at the questions that Emmy and I have put here to finalize the inspiration activity, to identify the project. And when the students actually identify the project, it would be very important to reframe these questions, right? So these are questions that we have produced for publication. These are not questions you ask of a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old, but you can reframe them in such a way so that children, before they engage, or students before they engage in an activity, are quite clear about why it will be amazing for them to actually do this particular thing, right? So I just downloaded it from module 4. This is an excerpt from this paper. It's a long article, but I just, in module 4, I only produced an abstract here for you, and then we cut it, all the literature review and everything, and this is the model. So do use those questions to summarize the inspiration activity, to formulate the project, and you do want personal investment, so it'd be very important to get it out of students. So when it comes to tools for breaking down relationships, participating in text, okay, so it doesn't matter, and as you will know, because you will look into a framework here, you will, for each of the stages, the inspiration, the engagement, and so on, you will want to use some tools enabling students to actually complete the activities, right? Engage for each of the stages, right? So each of them has a form of support. So support here, support here. So what I mean here by saying tools for breaking down relationships, participating in text. So for ELA 200, we're interested in supporting students reading, not writing, but reading, right? So supporting students reading. And you know that every text consists of multiplicity of relationships, grammatical relationships, whatever meaning sort of related relationships, historical relationships, geographical relationships, all kinds of relationships are participating in text, right? Because we're adults, we're kind of dealing with it quite nicely. All of us have problems, and all of us are slowed down by those problems, but overall we're functioning quite well, and well enough to be here in this academic class. And we don't remember the pain that it took to actually put it all together. Like, you know, at your age, you probably think, oh yeah, it was a little bit of a learning, but now I'm fine. How you felt at each moment and how your distress could have been eased, it's too late to tell. Nobody remembers. But one of the things we need to actually be clear about, that children do get challenged, and they should get challenged, but they need to be also given forms of support. Believing that a particular drill is going to result in a fantastic outcome, it's a hope. Student need lots of tools enabling them to explore text on their terms, so that they can play with text. Play with text meaning, what will happen if I look at this? What will happen if I look at that? What will happen if I look at that? Some of those tools are actually researched, so they are thought through and are understood to actually help with very specific problems. Some of the tools are basically generic tools, and students can use them freely, and only God knows what kinds of relationships these tools help them activate in their brain. But the more the merrier, because the more it gets activated, the more opportunities students have to turn things around in their head and explore what they understand. Now, that support should be individual and also group-based, and also teachers' explanations are fine, right? So I'm not against teachers' explanations, but if you talk to people all day, you'll be lucky if they want to listen to you next day. So we need to have group support and group activities. We can't have a group activity that doesn't actually have students' individual work engaged in it. That's the fault with group work, and I've had experiences as a student in group work when group work might have actually just come out. I'm that old, and yeah, and I was a very dominating person. So you know, my friends didn't really care, and they knew I'd do things faster. So I'd do the task in 5 minutes. So I'll do the whole thing, and everybody would be happy that it's done, right? So my colleagues, my friends, my peers hardly benefited from any group work. Right. So you need to develop a culture whereby, you know, group takes on a task. Group divides the task between children. Children report to the group. Group reports to the class. And teacher comments and helps and so on. So there's this diversity of levels of communication and learning. So we're not relying on one type of interaction, which is teacher-student, or even students only, or students-teacher only, right? We need to have also other resources, and you will also have other resources, including people coming from outside. So that's another resource in classroom. Now, in the on-campus class, I have spoken about things. I've spoken about things. So maybe before I have shown, what have I shown? I have shown in the on-campus class the speech-to-text model here. So I don't know whether I have a movie here of it or not. Not on this one, and this is sort of not a very good video, is it? I mean, not a very good slide if I can't do that. But you will find in the resources in module 4, here, this is the video, right? So if you click somewhere here, I probably there better or worse explain what it does. But the purpose of the avatar of speech to text is very simple. Children can type what they see. They don't even have to be literate. They just can type what they see, and they can play with the text that they have just inserted into the what do you call it, the graph. So you know, so when they type HOM and HOME or whatever gobbledygook they will type in, you do let them. It doesn't always have to be, children do not have to type always sense words. You know, by the time they get to your age, they will be typing sense words. When they're 5, when they're 3, when they're 4, when they're 6, we give them time for play, and because as they play, they don't just play senselessly. Every time they press on a keystroke and ask the avatar to say something, you know, and you can even get them to read what say it means, because they will be clicking here because they know that that will generate response from the avatar. But after a while, they might actually want to read what that button actually says, and they may actually type it into the avatar itself. So it's a wonderful tool for getting things read out instantly. Now the other thing I have, oh yeah, this is the thing. So this is another thing that I have.
Are you going shopping?
Are you going shopping, right?
Are you going shopping? Are you going shopping?
I'm not very good with that tool.
Are you going shopping?
All right.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
I'm not very good at using it, I have to say. I can't get the sequence right. I'm not doing it now. So this is talk typer.
Oh no, I'm not.
The talk typer has become much better now. But notice just that, so you can play with a talk typer and have a look what's happening. So pre-literate children who can't write, they can actually click here, talk to it, and the text comes out. Now, in classroom, on campus, we have, and you can create a whole website with 4-year-olds who can't read. You can do it in Chinese. And how? You know, you get it typed like this, and then you go to Google Translate, you translate it into selected language, which is Chinese, pops out in Chinese, copy, Control-C for copy, put it in a website, and we have a website in English and in Chinese. Perfect, right? And please don't think that it's a waste of time. It develops all sorts of awarenesses and skills. Control-C, for example, you know, right, for copy. But it develops all kinds of awarenesses. Now, once the computer, once you agree that, once you have typed, spoken, and the text has come up, and you have accepted the text by, look at this, by pressing, what did I press here? That green, you see it now? Okay, so I accepted this and it's down here. So we can actually, with children and with students, we can actually play here and find out, how do we know that the computer got it right? Certainly you can type those letters. Mind you that these are not necessarily capital letters as they are on the keyboard, but you know, well, maybe kids somehow, you know, they have a brain, they have more brain than we will ever have again. So maybe they can actually somehow figure out the difference between capitals and non-capitals on the keyboard. You know, 5 of them per keyboard, they will figure it out. A 2-year-old has just changed my friend's telephone, and she can't actually get on it anymore, what she used to have. So clearly they can actually operate those things. So on the one hand, in order to test whether the computer actually got the response right, we can type it into the text-to-speech, right, and make it, the computer say it. Another way, oh my goodness, I lost it, right? Oh,
Shopping?
okay. Another way is, of course, surely you have some ideas, but because I can't hear you, I will just speak about it. Another way is actually count. Are you going shopping? Shopping, one word or two words? English is really funny. It's a funny language because I'm not English, I can say that. In Polish, you would say, are you going shopping? And even here, it's a bit funny, right? Well, anyway, in English, you have these long syllables. English loves extending syllables. And are you going shopping? Right, well, maybe it does sound like one word. Anyway, so you can actually count whether whether they see the same amount of words on the screen as they could hear when they were counting themselves say it, right? So look at that. And you can do a lot of things here, like how do you know that the whole sentence is right? So we type R into here and we remove the E, okay, because maybe computer got it wrong. Sorry, friends. Maybe the computer got it wrong and are you going shopping doesn't actually require the E at the end. So we can type here AR without an E and see how it sounds. And then, oh my goodness, are you going shopping or are we going shopping? There has to be an E because she pronounces it differently. Now, I'm saying all these things to you because you will be exposed to a lot of techniques for teaching children read, and they're all fine. And I still have 4 weeks to torture you with some more ideas, but I want to strongly advocate for this free play. And one of the reasons other people don't advocate for free play because they are stuck in the 19th century phonics, and they've been arguing in the UK and everything about the science of phonics. And as they argue about it, the technology is changing, opportunities are changing, and nobody is looking there because they're still stuck into mama, mama. It's like maybe that was fine for when I was little or something, and maybe there is a place for it today too, but it's not like that there is only one exercise and everything else is evil, right? So what I'm encouraging you to actually explore module 4 for different types of activities. Now, I had a student here, I don't know how many years ago, say more or less 2.5 years ago in ELA 200, and she tested me and she took this talk typer home, and she had 2 little girls and she put them in front of a talk typer, and the first thing, of course, that she reported what the girls did was obviously swearing at each other, abusing, you are fat and you are ugly and you are stupid and you are, I don't know, whatever is wrong with them. I'm way past those kind of offensive joys. But anyway, she said, that sort of passed. And then the girls started actually producing text together, like having fun, like making the computer write. I don't remember whether it was a story or not, but at some moment throughout the activity, the little girl screamed out to mommy, I could, and she was pre-literate, and she said, I could write a whole book like this. And she, my student, she couldn't believe it because the little girl said what I am saying. Not only you could write a little book like this, but you could put it into Google Translate, get it in any language you wish, and decorate it with pretty pictures, and you can have multilingual websites and, PowerPoints, which could function as books and so on. Now, you could actually, if you wanted to, you could actually do that in Indonesian or in Chinese, send it to China, get the kids from China correct your Chinese, you will correct their English from Google Translate, and wow, what a wonderful exchange. Talking about Chinese, other things sort of, I just chaotically show you some ideas here because I'm recording it, so I might as well just do that. And probably for the next 4 weeks we will be looking at your designs and getting things more systematized. I am a strong proponent of calligraphy. I got it from Norman Deutsch, D-O-I-G-E, D-O-I-D-G, E, I think. Anyway, the brain that heals itself or something. I can't remember the title. And he had 2 books and I get confused now. But anyway, one of the things that they recommend is tracing letters, not just Australian, not just English alphabet, but also foreign letters. There's a reason for it. We've spoken about it in part 1 of this series of designing units of work. Human brain perceives features, doesn't perceive actually objects, right? So when you actually expose children to foreign characters, you challenge your children to see different organizations of letters, and in this way children become, they see more, right? It's like if you were running in your room only from right to left, or from top to the bottom of the room, you probably would not notice different parts of the room because you always cover the same track. But if you actually start, sort of covering all kinds of aspects of your room and going in circles and going across the room and all of that, your mind becomes, the map of the room becomes richer, and that's what you would like in your children. Anyway, who am I to argue? These were experts in the psychology of learning in Russia and in Canada, so I'm not arguing. They say it's good, I say it's good, and I'm sharing it with you. But you could actually create out of this an entire magnificent experience. So even if you're creating invitations for older people in right, and they will send them out and so on, and even if your invitations will be then put through Google Translate and copy and pasted onto paper, nevertheless, wouldn't it be nice to enrich the experience and actually have a Chinese or Japanese calligrapher come to the class, or a person from that culture, and have a beautiful music, few candles there, and have a bit of a spiritual cultural experience whereby you have this beautiful music, children sit quietly and they learn to do this calligraphy, this tracing of letters. At the same time, they actually are doing meditation, because the Japanese person will tell them you have to breathe nicely. If your body is shaking, you're not gonna get it right? So you have to actually slow down and so on. It's good for children, it's good for their minds, and it's good for their perception. So that's quite a nice activity. So you all have done that, right? So apple and banana, right? And cat, that's a cat, just in case you missed it. Now that's very funny. You know what it is? This is a W, right? This is a W. I couldn't do it, but the reason why it's a W, because in hiragana or katakana or whatever it is, this alphabet, I used to be really good at that. In Japanese, this stands for walking, right? But walking, okay, well, if it is for walking, if this is for walking in their language, you put 2 of them together and we have W. And then we can do, what can we do? We can put the walk here, apple, W-O, and then we can have L for whatever else you can think of L stands for, and K, and that would be nice. I'm sure there are rules that people tell you that is totally impossible, children will not grasp, but you never know. Play. Through play, people actually grasp a lot of things. So I have a few principles here. If you wanted to memorize them, they're very good principles. So creative work, then focused work, then drills, and back to creative. So creative, inspire children to do something. Then focused work, okay, well, how does it work? So we just sort of learn how things work. So this stands for this, this stands for this, right? So this is whatever focused work we were doing before with that, right? So whatever students were typing was the focused work. This was focused work too. The students had to count the words. They had to type it maybe even into here. They also had to check whether ARE or AR, right? So this is very focused work. So they've done the focused work. So you want to do focused work with children, that's very good. Focused work, it's very good to do drills afterwards. The drills are good, not in and of themselves, but stupid phonic drills are great when they actually, when children are already invested because they're doing creative work, when children have done focused work like we just did with Avatar and Talk Typer, and then in order to actually, so what happened was this is a motivation, right? This is really this is actually scientific. So this is the motivation. This is how memory works. This is the softer, less salient stimulus. So softer stimulus for memory. It goes like oh. It's sort of like, yeah, that's interesting. Oh my God. AR and ARE sound different. And then you can actually do pretty good drills. I don't care where you get them from. There's 5 million drills on the internet. I probably have a whole website somewhere. I'll show you. I do have a whole website of drills. I have everything. I've got everything. Where's my drills? So you go to my website. And I haven't been in my drill website for quite a while. So education. We need to leadership blog, Anya, resilience, education hub, and then you can't see the whole page, but somewhere here you see those things change. They actually are resources. So I have lots of ESL resources, games resources, right? So I've got them here. I managed to actually, you could do it too. I've done it with Google Sites. So you can see this is all free. This well, it was free for me. It's a database that comes with Google Sites, but you have to use the old Google Sites pages, not the new ones. The new ones are as flat as iPhone, but this one has right. So I have, what do we have here? The topic of game. Then this is the something description of the game or whatever. Then skills I wrote here, activity, spelling, various games, game videos, multimedia text, level for what kind of children, and the person who actually found the game, because sometimes I found the game, but sometimes actually my ELA 200 or other students, postgraduate students, were finding games. So I was, if they didn't put it in, I actually honored their work. So there's 5,000 different games. I'll put this link for your website. And so there are drills. The drills are good because what drills do, they give a stronger stimulus, right? And it's all good. That's the competition. That's a sort of really like, you increase the stakes in the game, and then you sort of drop it, and the students go back to the creative things. They continue doing their project. But softer stimulus first and stronger stimulus later on is how memory works. So the first one is, what was that? And this is when you actually start doing discerning, right? And you know that from, what's his name? Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson says, softer stimulus, you explore, you generate pictures, and then you start doing comparison between those and increasingly stronger divisions your brain creates. And now when you go back to the creative aspects of your work, which is continue creating whatever you're creating, you come in with understandings that are already in your left brain, so you come in smarter, right? Let's put it this way, smarter. You have more processes actually memorized. So nothing wrong with drills. Drills have a place, but you don't start with drills because it becomes overwhelming. It's too strong. It's like waking up in the morning and someone telling you to eat a 3-course meal. Like, here's the Polish soup, which has everything in it. And then you have a Polish second dish, which has everything in it. And then you eat this cake, which has everything in it. And you drink your wine and coffee, and by 9 o'clock you have to be out at work. You'd never even leave the house, right? So that's the sort of, if you do drills only, or if you rely on drills as a main source of information, it's too strong. The brain will explode. So that's I do have that because tracing is very good, but I also explored, here's the website, so I will include it in your PowerPoint. But it's very nice to not just, as I said, use the Australian alphabet, but also other alphabets. And I found here this website, and it has very nice introduction to the Japanese characters, so you can see that stands for what, tree? I can't remember what any more things were standing for. I think this would be the river, right? This is gate, this is walking, this is, oh my goodness, that was a gate too. So I don't know, maybe this is fence, I don't know. So clearly that's an eye, that's a rain, that's fire. And you can you can actually, so that since I'm throwing things around now at this very moment, just to introduce you to your imagination to things. Remember how I was at some stage saying, especially on campus, I was saying, when you design your activities for students, it would be nice to have, or maybe shouldn't be mixing now. Okay, so I'll give you the principle first. Okay, that's the principle when you design new things. The principle here is, they say, that it's a waste of time or even harmful when you teach academic skills to children before they actually have the requisite motivational and intellectual foundations. Right? So that's why you have that creative first, and then maybe a bit of focus work before they actually go right into the nitty-gritty of it to actually build stronger relationships in their heads. So there are many ways in which you can actually stimulate those things in students. It works for 18-year-olds and it works for 3-year-olds, right? So that's the same problem. We all have the same problem when it comes to learning. So one of the things that the people in what was that school called? Barbara Arrowsmith Young School, remember? I think I've spoken about it in part 1. Looking into playing with children with clock, right? So learning clock, but not learning how the clock works or how the watch works, so that after 1 hour with you, they become astronomers. You just want them to start gradually see that, there are different sizes and different angles of hands on the watch and all of that, and maybe some of them are bright and they will get the idea of 3:30, but just so that's one way that they were doing also other things. I'm not sure if you can actually have a look at that video that I recommended in that video, and there's another one. So we might leave it for another thing. But they were basically making children hold a piece of paper like this and make them type a V, then dash, then 0, V dash and 0, V dash and 0, and then they covered that, and again V dash 0, V dash 0, V dash 0, and again cover it with another piece of paper, and the next line. I don't know what it was doing to children, but apparently it was improving their writing. So, the brain is a mysterious thing, reacts to mysterious exercises. But for reading, we did that. But remember that in class, especially students on campus, I spoke about it's really good sometimes to engage children in an activity where they experience the evolution of writing and reading, right? So you give them experiences, especially with younger children, right? Because with older children, it's no purpose of it. This is just a curiosity. But with younger children, you could run a shop activity, a shop where, that we have shoppers and shopkeepers and people from the land. And anyway, people come and whatever. And you have clay tablets and you have pre-literate children. So instead of writing you owe me rye and you owe me salt, right, and for this amount of money and so on, we will try to keep a record because it's important to keep a record so that we can make money. And how will we do it? Give it to them to solve the problem, and they will solve the problem because, I don't know, nature is mysterious. They will draw a salt and they will do all kinds of things. They might actually do it the way our ancestors did that, with crosses and dashes and God knows what with. And you will want to get them to the point where the activity actually breaks, in a sense that they will actually experience that it's fun with clay tablets, but you can't actually get far with it. You can do lots of things with a clay tablet. You cannot write much on it. Oh, that's a problem, right? That is a problem, because if someone wants to, that's a problem. If you want to keep record and the tablet is very small and and you need to keep a record for quite a while, it's really unwieldy. What else? Heavy to carry, right? What else? You can show them what you can do with email. You can show them the email. Even if they're little, they will get it. You do it in such a way that actually allows and makes it possible for the message to actually get into their brain. That email is fantastic and things like that. What else? How do you say please? You can draw maybe the head of your mother, but she owes you maybe, some money for whatever you sold to mommy, but how do you write please? And if you want to send an invitation and you want to put the word please, it's not there. It's very unwieldy, right? So taking children through those evolutionary stages is not a bad idea. Then maybe they can, you've got plenty of time, especially in early childhood. You can actually invite them to develop their own alphabet. Now, I dread to see the outcome of it, because sometimes actually they're quite ingenious and they may actually invent something, but that's okay. And again, you will get them to the point where the activity breaks, and wouldn't it be nice to have something that is already existing, and we can show them what, English alphabet can enable them to do, as opposed to their own inventions, which are fine to a point, but they all break after a while. So that's quite interesting. So you'll find in module 4 a lot of resources that I have actually put there for you to explore. You may think that these links are irrelevant. They're extremely relevant. I would like you to look at them because they're extremely relevant. Okay, so the website which I spoke about, this one, right, where I have these 5,000 drills, the link is right here. It's called ESL Tricks, right? I called it ESL Tricks because it was meant to be something else, and it just, the name of a page remained as it does, right? So so that's that. You've got the avatar link, you have a speech to text, nice phonic resource. I don't know, I can't remember anymore, I've done it in the past. And we've got something here. Right, plenty. Oh, okay. What also I have done in the past was to create games, and games are very nice resources. I hope that I have these games. I've got links here for those games to explain them. So this is the same game, but this is in a PowerPoint. So I'm not sure whether you have a link to this, but to the video, it's somewhere on my page. But basically the idea is to have a okay, so it no longer wants to play. Oh.
Hello, my name is Sam.
Alright. It destroyed my... I don't like it how it is now. You see, in the past you only had that little speech icon and you pressed on it without that thing that is happening now. You have this long line and it's so chunky and everything.
Hello, my name is Sam. Hello, my name is Sam.
Alright. And now the child can record herself or himself here. So you go to insert on the PowerPoint, insert voice, your recording comes out and you can record yourself. And at the end of the day, it will look like, I don't want to do that now, but basically, okay, insert, where's the record? Audio, record audio. My name is Bill. Now we have intellectual discussion.
What is your name?
My name is Bill. And the kids love it. They can play till the cows come home. So I know that for a fact because I was showing this in a postgraduate class, and there was a 6-year-old boy actually came with the mother, with a student of mine. Jesus, we had no end to it. So basically the idea is now to take a child who can't write and speak, like a sort of young child, and engage the child through games, right? So they
These are the games I play.
so he can play those games, and it's all very good. And after the child, and then he says, "You play now, right?" So
You play now.
okay, so these ones here are basically you click here, and it will take you to a YouTube game. No, pardon me, YouTube recording where I actually am Sam, and I explain to Bill or whatever his name is. How I played those games. So this is me talking through the games, and then I say you play now, and he can play the games, and here's the drill.
Did you play?
And the child goes like, I don't know.
What happened?
No idea. All right.
Did you click on start?
So I dread to actually, if you actually truly run this PowerPoint on your own at home, you will notice that when you click on the question mark, it will take you to help, and the help will say,
Did you play? Yes, I did.
Alright, so then you can click on go back wherever I don't know where's the play, so maybe I played, maybe that's the thing, Anyway, it will take you to a help file. So that's the idea with those question marks. So the question marks takes you to a slide where it actually gives you a hint how to answer. And then you basically take children through lots of drills whereby they actually, this kid was learning to actually speak. That was a speaking exercise, but you could use similar resource. So this is no longer 5 lessons. This is, you can actually turn it into 5 lessons, but you can create a whole game like this, whereby it will take a child so many hours to actually complete it, but it engages a child in a playful way in developing a particular skill. Here the child was learning how to actually summarize a game that he or she was playing, and to do so in a complex game, in a complex way, because sentences were like, were the eggs in baskets? Yes, they were. Like, mind you, I was actually complying with someone else's requirements here. They wanted at very prepositional phrases like in baskets and into the baskets. I put them all here. You see, you can actually, yes, and there's nothing here, so I don't know. Yeah, so the child has to write here something, and then if the child doesn't know what to write, they can click on the question mark and it will take them to a help slide. So that's the kind of principle. I hope I have this game somewhere explained. I'll give you the link. Then another game I created, which is also a great thing to... before I exhaust you with my game, this is a great one. You know what, I may have to run it, and if I lose the recording, then it's just how it is. Okay, so let's risk. This is worth risking. So this is Joanna, some other unit I taught a million years ago. This is how she was teaching people how to compare and contrast. So for example, her students were to create, for example, a scientific report, right? And that's very interesting. So how do you teach a child to create a scientific report? And remember, she was my student, so obviously I taught her the principle of compare and contrast. So she thought, okay, how am I gonna do that? So she actually created a little resource, the few pages that you will see here, and this PowerPoint is in your module 4. And she thought, okay, well, I'll compare a newspaper with a science report, just to show to children the difference. So when you actually scroll through it, distinguishing between scientific and other text. So she's looking at the concept of a title, subtitle, headings, short paragraphs, table. You could look at anything, whatever you wish, but I'm showing this to you because it is so much fun. So scientific report has a title, has a subtitle, has headings, has short paragraphs, may have a table. But let's have a look, for example, at a newspaper using the same terms, right? Using the same terms. It does have a title, but it doesn't have a subtitle, right? It doesn't have headings. It doesn't have short paragraphs. It has long paragraphs. It doesn't have a table. It may have a photograph and a caption. Isn't that sweet? You have this PowerPoint in your... Oh, it worked. I didn't lose the recording. You have a PowerPoint in your resources in Module 4, so you can learn how to program it, right? So you can see every step of how she actually created these animations. So another thing I created a million years ago, it's a concept of... now the links nowadays are not really good because I've done it like 5 years ago or more, and but the concept is still great. So I'll tell you the concept, okay? So there's 5 million games for children online, but they are all disconnected. So I thought, what about if I created an environment for them whereby I'll say insert shape, and I'll take an arrow, like that one. I'll put it here. I'll make it orange. It's still invisible. Make it white. All right. And then I will insert a link underneath, hyperlink underneath it. And when children click on it, it will take them to a game about, what is it? Garden? Right. I could take a new arrow and put it here, and it will take them to a game about how to build a house, or what is in the house. Some of the games have language, some of the games require from students to produce language, written or spoken, right? Maybe another arrow will be here on the person, and it will actually tell them so I will take them to a game whereby maybe it will show them what this person, what's the job of the person, or what she likes for eating, cooking games and all of that. So that was a great idea. I used the drawings of a student, Natasha Hardy, I think. I have Right, so you can see all these arrows. I'm not sure if they all work today. So every time you click on them, they take you to different slides, and now you can actually go to different games, right? So that's the idea. You go to different games, and you can still record yourself saying things.
Why?
Well, that was very useful, right? I have no idea why I recorded this. Anyway, so there, but you could record yourself. So, so you have cooking games. You can record yourself telling a story about those games. Children can. Okay, so each of those is basically. And here's, did you open the link? What happened? Right. So you can actually cue children to actually start telling a story about what they've done. So that's a nice thing. Yeah, in the past you could actually play a video through PowerPoint. Now Microsoft made it impossible. Don't save. Okay, so you can see that there's a lot of tools that you could use in order to, I will tell you to do what. In order to, so when children have a creative work to do, or right, they want to create something, and now what you want is to do some soft focused work, right, so that they can learn exploratory work. Let's call it focused exploratory work as soft a stimulus. And what you can do then is actually take them through different activities, any of them, you know, this, and they can sort of go, oh, these are the little O's. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Oh, I see. If I wanted to do this, I could do this, I could do this, you know. So they can go from this activity back here and maybe create something, but then they can go to drills and drill something to get actually a bit better. So use those ready-made games to get a bit better at things, and then back again to creative activity. So those games here definitely follow this system, because the idea obviously of a game like this is not for a child to succeed at the game, is to gain from the activities that the game generates some understandings that the game is teaching them, so that they can now bring them back to their project. So you can see when you do such a rich well, I don't know whether they're rich tasks, because the definition of them changes depending on whatever, but macro task, rich task, when you do project-based learning, you can actually have different layers of learning experiences, whereby children switch from, okay, we do this, so now exploratory work, how is it done? Okay, so and you look at it, they're doing now exploratory work, so softer work. So there could be games, could be exploring the internet, could be doing things like this, could be doing other things as well. I'll show you some other things, right? Or any of those. Then they could do drills, even silly things like this, you know.
Okay, so you see what's the goal? The goal is to actually read words as they appear. So you paste the text and you click on play and look what's happening. So I'm gonna click and I have to say the word first so I can actually time it well. So suddenly something amazing happened. As Cinderella was sitting all alone, there was a burst of light and a fairy appeared. Don't be alarmed, Cinderella, said the fairy. I know you would love to go.
Right, so you have a link to this. It's called Spreader. Right, so that's great. That's your coursework. I have no problem with those when they are actually in the right place. Now there are other things here. This PowerPoint is very good, because actually I'll show you what it does. It has a French animation here. I have never seen that animation in Australian PowerPoints, but let's play that
One day alarm was resting when I lit up. Mouse, who lived nearby, ran playfully over his back and down over his head to the ground.
Now you could actually time it better, and the animation allows you to time it better to actually speed up the writing. You can't slow down the child talking, but you could speed up this, but it doesn't matter. What the child is learning here, what is that the text is read from left to right.
One day alarm was resting when I lit.
You know what I did?
One day alarm was resting when I lit up. Mouse, who lived nearby, ran playfully over his back and down over his head to the ground.
I got it right this time, right? Because you have to press twice. You have to press the speaker and then very quickly on the screen to actually get the animation going. So that's very nice, right? Nobody has to actually master the reading here, but this is a very nice awareness raising thing.
One day.
Oh my god, I want to go back. Alright, at the beginning. So
One day.
Alright, so you know what's happening. It's changing slide because it's going to make my life miserable.
One day alarm was resting when I lit up. Mouse, who lived nearby, ran playfully over his back and down over his head to the ground.
Yeah, well, that's it. So that was a lovely. So that's I'll put those slides into your. And what's in here? Well, this one is less relevant because I have mastered this further. But so I don't have to show you this one anymore. Well, these were the sort of, okay, I looked at the fairy tales and I found out, that is before I developed that model for reading for emotion, I found out that there is a structure to fairy tales. Not that I was surprised, but there was a structure. And the structure was that something happens and there's always a dialogue. So you can actually show to children lots of these stories, and some of them don't have a dialogue because they have a different dialogue. So show to them that have a dialogue. And you can show them, oh my god, this and this happens, and then, oh great big monster said one of them stepped on little brother with one of his huge feet, whatever. I can't make sense out of it now. But yeah, so I thought, oh my goodness, so there's a structure to it. And then later on, obviously, I developed some other things that overtook that little observation. So you've got a lot of these resources on in your module 4. You've got also in module 4 some I want you to read this text, it's very nice. If you don't mind, you've got those reading strategies. I'm not sure whether I updated them, but they're good enough to sort of start thinking. You've got reading for emotions. Reading for emotions, I have discussed it, I think, in my previous parts. I'm just not gonna give time to it. But yeah, you've got a lot of things, so I can finish for now and we can get going with this assignment 2. Okay, we'll see how we go. Thank you.